It always seemed like a distant dream for me to go back to these lands. My childhood was spent with my father, teaching me about Moses Nazi and all of the Armenian fables. And it was a surreal experience. I always wanted to go back. I always imagined that I would go back. But to be there was a completely different experience. And I want to talk about my experience a little bit with you and how this ties into my family. In May 1915, my great-grandmother Gayane was violently ripped from her home in Bulanik, historically known as Go, in the Mush province of eastern Turkey, what is today eastern Turkey. Her husband was called to serve in the Ottoman army, and he, of course, was killed. And a couple of months later, they basically took my great-grandmother and her children, and they forced her to march in the deserts. And they killed her children in front of her eyes, her 4 boys. By the time she reached Echmiadzin, which was at the time in the Russian Empire, she had already witnessed, I think, a lot. And she made her way later on to Tiflis, which was in Georgia, which is today in Georgia at least. And she never really spoke about it. She always hid her inner pain. The few times that she would talk about it, in the Mush dialect, she would say, Maryargir, meaning the fatherland, the fatherland. That is where I want to go back. I want to put my head on the dandelion fields. I want to see our house again. And her dream was never fulfilled. When I reached a certain age of maturity, I promised myself. I told myself, you know what, I'm going to live my great-grandmother Gayane's dream. It's the year 2013, this was last summer. Why not? Let's do this, let's go. And I did have the opportunity to go through OTI. And when I did go into this town, what caught my eye was elderly man playing backgammon. And I said, surely they must know something. They must know something of the Armenians living here, for they are the older generation. And Mahed and I were in this car, and we had one of our Turkish students translate for us. Her name was Sahed. And she asked them, do you know any Armenian churches here or any Armenian remains? And they said, no, but we can arrange a meeting with the mayor of the town for you. And by that time, when we were waiting for them to arrange this meeting with the town mayor, very spontaneously, a big crowd formed around us of Kurds. And they looked at us so tentatively, and they said, wow, Ermeni, like these are Armenians are here. And before we left to meet with the town mayor, one of them just looked at me and said, you know what, I know what happened, and I'm sorry. And I didn't question this further, I just said thank you, and I left, and we met with the mayor. And what can I say, in his eyes, I felt like I was sitting with an Armenian grandfather. And he very hospitably offered Mahed and I tea, coffee, what would you like, let us sit, let us talk. And we did, we talked. And he told me, well, I have stories passed down from Armenians as well. He said, my grandfather actually told me about why did they do this to the Armenians. They were the ones that made this town what it was. They are the ones that made the infrastructure, the businesses, the colleges, and look where this town is today. And when he said this, I really wasn't expecting this. I was expecting the same denialist rhetoric that I've heard so much. And I wasn't expecting to hear an apology, and he formally did apologize to me. It was a very moving experience for me to see tears in this man's eyes, and these tears were reciprocated in my eyes, and we really connected for a moment. And I do know that there is a movement today in Turkey, in Istanbul particularly, of Turks coming to terms with their history. This group is marginal, I'm not going to lie. It's not like this is a widespread event that's going throughout Turkey. No, majority are still denialists. But there is a small marginal group that is willing to question their history, and they're willing to admit it. And this group really gives me hope, because my name is Ani. As most of you may know, this is a historic town that is today in Turkey. And when I went to Ani, I can't describe to you what it felt like to stand there and read a plaque that says everything on it except for the Armenian presence on this land. Armenians never existed here. These churches, these aren't Armenian churches. They're, maybe unicorns, but no mention of Armenians. And to have your identity, to have your being essentially denied like that, it was a different feeling for me. It makes the saying of I'm sorry, it makes the feeling of empathizing ring really hollow. Because as I was standing there in Ani, which is technically today in Turkey, I was overlooking the Ahuryan River, and on the other side I could see the Armenian border. What was separating me and Armenia was a river, a small border, essentially, a border that is closed. A border that is closed by Turkey, actually, not by Armenia. And to say what I felt at that moment I can't do justice. I don't know if hopeless is the word, I guess, but it's really interesting to stand there and to think about that your great-grandfather and your great ancestors were standing on these very lands. And today, none of this is mentioned. No Armenians were ever here. And to be honest with you, should I feel thankful if Ahtamar Church is still standing today in Van, in Lake Van? Should I? It's one of 1,000 Armenian churches. It's one of 1,000 Armenian colleges, institutions that was robbed of them. And today, to have Ahtamar standing there, I would have rather, sometimes I say to myself, I would have rather not seen it. Because in all of Van, as you drive, you won't find a single Turkish flag. But right next to Ahtamar, which is, by the way, on an island, for those of you that don't know, to see a massive Turkish flag for me is a provocation. It's saying, hey, look, Armenians, just in case you forget whose land this is today, we will be here to remind you. This flag will remind you. Small little details like this make me remember, actually, that we have a long way to go. Saying sorry really doesn't do anything to me. When we went to Armenia later on, I could see thousands of Armenian men leaving Armenia through the Georgian border to find work in Sochi. And this economic strain that is hampering Armenia today and that has forced me and my family to leave after the Karabakh War, no amount of sorry or no amount of feelings of empathy will ever do anything for that. I appreciate it, I appreciate the marching in the streets, but things really need to move. It's been 99 years. Armenia is going through a white genocide today. And I really am hopeful for the future. But sometimes when I see what, for example, Prime Minister Erdogan has said lately, it makes me laugh. It's laughable. Our common pain, really? When did Talat Pasha suffer? When did he have to jog in Deir Zor? This is laughable. And we don't have to be thankful for mediocre steps. We need to be thankful for genuineness. Thank you.